Hello. Well, as you can see, we're already within lesson 1.20. This is a lesson that we've already talked about on one occasion, and it's a lesson which deserves at least 2, if not 3 or 4 different days of study. It's a lesson which, as you may remember, has a number of landmines within it, some unexpected forms, especially verb conjugations, which are unexpected, which are irregular in their forms, and so it's one which deserves a good deal of attention. The second section is a review of the verbs you've learned most recently, verbs numbers 12 through 23, and those are abrir, salir, quedarse, irse, caminar, huir, ver, conocer, venir, encontrarse, and hablar, and then last of all, ir. And make sure that as you click on these pictures right here, you're going to see, this time not the pronunciation of the word, but rather you'll see me acting out the gesture. Make sure you do the gesture the same time that you repeat the word within this section. Now the third and fourth sections are very important because this is where the majority of the challenge comes within this lesson, lesson 1.20, the irregular verb conjugations. And so in the first of the 2 sections, which is section 3, you can see that you're simply to listen. And so you click on each conjugation and listen to the patterns. Maybe go through that twice in that fashion. Then in the fourth section, here you see the symbol indicating you're to say. This is where you hypothesize what you think the conjugation should sound like, and then you click in order to verify if you're right or not. When I say hypothesize, hopefully it's a hypothesis grounded in some experience, because you've heard these words at least on 1 day, if not 2 days by this point. But in any case, you say the word first and click to verify if you were right or not. Well, the next section is where I'd like to really start to focus. And although it's intended to let you, if you click on it here, by the way.
La televisión.
La televisión. It's intended to help you to review the nouns that you've learned up to this point. The nouns which are most critical, I should say, really for you to give an extended discourse, an extended talk about yourself. This is an opportunity for us to talk about the whole issue of gender. You remember that items, nouns in Spanish, objects, are all either masculine or feminine. Now, those terms could just as easily be group A and group B. To say that, for example, la cartera, the wallet, is a feminine noun, why is it feminine? Or like el teclado. El teclado is the keyboard. Why is it masculine? There's no particular necessarily rhyme or reason as to why these are masculine or feminine. So call them group A and group B. Group B, I'll call them masculine and feminine because that's what you'll be accustomed to if you ever take a class independent of me. But in any case, it's critical that you learn whether a word is masculine or feminine. That is to say, is it preceded with el or la, or if it's plural, is it preceded by los or las? Or if you're speaking about just a particular, indiscriminate, I should say, not a particular, pencil, for example. We're just talking about a pencil. It could be anyone. Is it un or is it una? And if I'm speaking about a group of them, do I use unos or unas? So knowing whether or not a noun is masculine or feminine will be very important, both for the definite and indefinite articles. That's what I'm talking about, the words the, a, and some, but also for any word that describes these nouns, that is to say what's called an adjective. If I want to talk about this as a black keyboard, I could say es un teclado negro. Okay, I said negro for black. But if I'm talking about this as a black wallet, es una cartera negra. The word negra, the word black, changed from negro to negra because it's describing a feminine noun. And so knowing whether a noun is masculine or feminine is very important. Therefore, when you're learning these words, like la televisión, don't just say televisión or tele, say la televisión or la tele. And when this next one here, autobús, don't just say autobús, say el autobús. Okay? Now, how do you know if a word is masculine or feminine noun? Pretty much I'm going to expect of you to simply memorize that fact, although the most obvious distinction is that almost all words and all nouns ending in the sound o are masculine. Like, what words do you know thus far in this group? El pescado, you can see down here, el pescado. Or, help me out here, el apartamento, Okay, whereas a feminine noun, which will typically end in the sound a, like la casa, or what else can we come up with here? No los trastes, la tarea. Okay, for homework, la tarea ends in the sound a. It's a feminine noun, but there are many others where it won't be obvious at all. And so you simply, as you're learning this new vocabulary, you need to always say the article the definite article the, before you say the noun. Always say, for example, la casa. Never just say casa as you're learning them. Okay, all right. So that's the issue of gender. We can also use these pictures here to remind us, well, actually not to remind us, to initiate a conversation on it we haven't even dealt with whatsoever, and it's extremely important. It's the issue of pronunciation. Now, pronunciation is not just a frill. It's not just a supplementary activity that we might, or focus that we might have if we really want to speak Spanish well, but if we're just taking a class in school, or for school, it doesn't really matter. The teacher will understand us. The teacher's probably an English-speaking person too. So if I don't pronounce exactly like a Hispanic person, what difference does it make? No, it makes a lot of difference because, first of all, I lived in France for 13 years of my life, and you do not want to sound like an English-speaking person. You don't want to be embarrassing. You don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want others to think you're uneducated. You want to give it your best shot. You want to try and imitate, to the extent that you're able, the sounds of the language you're learning. But there's also, beyond the whole issue of just your pride, is the matter of comprehension. There are times when people will not understand you if you don't say the word accurately, or you could even say something embarrassing if you don't say the word accurately. I was a student teacher many, many years ago in Talladega, Alabama, a beautiful place. I loved it very much. I loved the people and enjoyed the environment very much. And while I was student teaching there at the high school, I remember on one particular day I was presenting to the students, and they would make fun of my accent. I was from the north, from Michigan. They were from Alabama, and so we would go back and forth, kind of lightheartedly. We got along very well, but it was lightheartedly making fun of each other's accent. They would hold their noses when they tried to imitate me, and I would do my best to drawl like a Southerner, which I do very poorly. But in any case, on this particular day, I was teaching them the prepositions in Spanish, and at that point I didn't know what I was doing. I simply wrote words on the board, told them, okay, this means this in English, and that was not at all the way to teach. But I was a student teacher. What did I know? In any case, I got to the preposition sobre, which in Spanish or in English means on. Okay. And if you're in the South right now, you may not have understood what I just said. But in any case, they've been writing very diligently in their notebooks all the prepositions and the translations of these words. And but when I said sobre, it means on. They just looked at me. No one wrote a thing. I looked at them a second time and said, sobre, on, please write it. They just looked at me with curiosity. They had no idea what I was talking about. And then this little cheerleader in the back of the classroom raised her hand, and she said, Mr. Nesbitt, what'd you say? I said, sobre, it means on, O-N. And she said, oh, you mean own. You can see that own, to them, meant this concept, whereas on to me had this concept, like this. Estos lentes están sobre la mano. These glasses are on my hand. No, to them they're on their hand. And so pronunciation can make all the difference in the world when it comes to comprehension. Now, why is actually own is a very good example. We have a tendency in English to create what are called diphthongs. A diphthong is when we say a vowel sound. What's a vowel sound? A vowel sound is a sound you make with your mouth, you might say open, like a, e, o, u. Those are more or less the vowel sounds in Spanish, and then combinations of those. When we make a vowel sound with the mouth open, in English it would be like a, e, or I, e, o, u, U. Those are vowel sounds. We tend to create diphthongs. That means we change the shape of our mouth in the midst of the sound. We don't keep it, what you might say, pure. We don't keep it one single sound. We modify it. I'll give you two examples. One, of course, is own. as we open our mouth, and there's only one letter, the letter O there, forming this vowel sound, we nonetheless change the shape of our mouth as we pronounce it. Ow, ow, own. Okay. Now, if you're living in the North United States, you may think, well, I never say own. Yeah, but you say the month of May. You don't say the month of May. You say the month of May, May. Or I need to cut the grass. I need to mow the lawn. Mow, oh. Like you see how my mouth is changing its shape as I say the sound O. Well, that you will never do as you speak Spanish. You will keep. It's as though you were to set your jaw and all the other parts of your mouth that create the pronunciation of a sound. You will set them in concrete. Once you start to say the vowel sound, you will not change the shape of your mouth whatsoever. Watch. I'll take the vowel sound, the basic 5 letters in Spanish, the vowels. I have to go from one sound to the next, but in the midst of the sound, nothing changes. Now watch. E. E. This is probably the most important one here, along with E. This next one is the most important because these are the ones that Americans tend to mangle to the greatest extent. O. Okay, we want to say O. And I'll give you some examples in a little bit here. U. Notice that once I begin the sound of the vowel, nothing moves, nothing changes whatsoever. There's a second thing I'm doing is I clip the sound short. That's because that is the way in which you will pronounce these sounds in Spanish, but it also will help you to avoid creating a diphthong, changing the shape of your mouth, if you clip it short. So instead of saying ah, say ah. Instead of saying a, elongated, extended 2 sounds, a, the month of May, say e. See, nothing's moving. Okay. Consequently, let me show you right now, if I were speaking poorly Spanish, and I don't speak it perfectly, but if I were to be speaking it atrociously, I would say la tele, el autobús, la casa, la radio, el campo, la ropa, el train. Okay? Hopefully you've never heard me up to this point pronouncing in that fashion, although if you were in a typical classroom in the United States, you'll hear people all around you speaking in such a fashion, unless the teacher is diligent to emphasize the importance of pronunciation. Now, what should these sound like? I'll just use the word tele as opposed to televisión. I'll slow it down too. Tele. Once I start the vowel sound e, nothing moves, and I chop it short. La tele. Okay, so this, instead of saying tele, it's tele. Instead of autobús, autobús. Notice the o. I'm not changing anything on the shape of my mouth. Autobús. Cut the vowel sound short. Let nothing change as far as the shape of your mouth. Even casa. You're thinking, how can you mangle the sound ah? An American would say casa. A Hispanic person would say casa. See the more the reduced duration of the vowel sound. Radio. Now, this is another issue. We're not talking about consonants today, but I will mention the letter R because it's obviously so radically different than the way that the letter R is handled in English. In English, most of Americans will pronounce the R down in their throat, like radio, the radio. Whereas a Hispanic person will pronounce the letter R in the front of the mouth. And the tip of the tongue hits the roof of your mouth right behind your teeth on just once in most cases. For example, the word for, I can't think of it right now, you know. Let's say pero. Pero means however or but. Pero. Okay, that was a P-E-R-O is the way it'd be spelled. If I were to say the word dog, which you've already heard, I would say perro. Notice that I let the tip of my tongue hit the roof of my mouth. It fluttered several times. Perro. Okay? It's called rolling the R. That's because there are 2 R's in the word for dog. P-E-R-R-O. So the word however or but is pero, because there's only 1 R. And when there are 2 R's, like in the word dog, spelled identically but with 2 R's, perro. I roll the R. The tip of my tongue flutters against the roof of my mouth, right behind my teeth, several times. And this also occurs, this rolling of the R also occurs when the first sound within a noun is the letter R. It's a sound, for example, I wouldn't say, although there's only one R in this word radio, I don't just say radio, I say radio. I roll the R a little bit. I flutter my tongue against the roof of my mouth. When the R is in the initial position of a word, you roll it. And you know some names you probably heard, Spanish-speaking names like Roberto. Roberto. It's not Roberto. It's certainly not Roberto. Please, Roberto, like an American person. But even you don't let your tongue hit the roof of your mouth just one time, although there's only one R in the name. You don't say Roberto. It's Roberto. You let it flutter, or you roll the R. Okay. We can move on just really quickly. Here's el campo. Very important. I said there are two vowel sounds that Americans tend to really mangle. They are the sounds O. We want to say O. Okay. And then I guess there's really three in a sense. The U also isn't too pretty. We say, like in the word moon, the moon, we say ooh. We change our mouth rather radically as we pronounce that sound. In Spanish, the sound U, there's no movement whatsoever. So in the same word, the word moon in Spanish is luna. Not luna, but luna. O. Okay? But the other vowel that we really tend to have difficulty with is the vowel E. Because we create such a radical diphthong when we say A in English. If I say, therefore, the country, or the countryside, I say el campo. It's E. It could help you a little bit to pronounce the sound E correctly, by the way. To, in essence, smile a little bit as you say it. I don't know if I'm smiling, but that's what it feels like. El campo. I'm pushing the sound by smiling upward into my, pronouncing this part of my face, my nasal cavities. And I'm saying not A. Not pronounce it down in my throat here, but more in this part of my face, you could say. El campo. Okay, notice once I start saying nothing moves in the shape of my mouth. El campo. Okay, el campo. Be very careful about that sound, el, because it's used in every sentence practically, and because we have so many Hispanic words or expressions or names of restaurants that have slipped into into the United States and into English, that we have become accustomed to saying L. Like there's a great restaurant here in the area where I live called El Azteco. Well, it's not at all El Azteco, it's El Azteco. But so many examples of L are mismanaged in English that you really need to make an effort to pronounce it El. Okay? El campo, la ropa. Notice how I roll the R. There's only one R at the beginning of the word ropa. But because it's in the initial position, I cause my tongue to flutter against the roof of my mouth. Ropa, la ropa. And then last of all, el tren. Now here's a good example of a word in which there is one R, and when I just cause the tip of my tongue to hit the roof of my mouth one time, because it's not in the initial position. The first sound is t in tren. Okay? But the tip of my tongue will hit the roof of my mouth just one time. Now you, or not you would never do this, but earlier when I was imitating a poor American accent, trying to speak Spanish, I say el train. El train. Notice the two gross errors I made in that pronunciation. I said for smile a little bit, push the sound upward in your face, chop it short, let nothing change. El. Secondly, tren. The American, the travesty that Americans would commit would be to say get the R down in their throat, where it should be pronounced in the front of the mouth with the tongue hitting the roof of the mouth. Tren. So I've spent a long time in this pronunciation, and it's extremely important. I'll undoubtedly come back to it, so I don't apologize for spending so much time. There's nothing more abominable than hearing a person. To mispronounce is one thing, but to hear a person, in essence, disrespect a language because they will not put out the effort to try to use the phonics system, the sound system of that other language, that to me is inexcusable. There's got to be an effort made. Because those people, as well as their language, are worthy of respect. And so therefore, why not? Since we've spent so much time with the we spent so much time with the pronunciation, let's go through these words and have you just repeat them after me. La tele. Okay, don't say la tele. Okay, start focusing on clipping the vowel sound short. E. Push the sound upward in your face, the sound e. Smile a little bit. La tele, or la televisión. Next, el autobús. Okay, el autobús. La casa. La radio. Now I know it's not easy. It's not easy to learn to roll the R after you've been speaking English for so many years, and only English. But it's really critical you do so. And I already can hear people say, I can't roll my R's. I've heard that from students so many times, and yet I know that it is not true. When you're a little kid, almost invariably it's not true. There may be some exceptions, but don't assume you're an exception. When you're a little kid, you're playing with cars on the ground. You're rolling your R's. You're doing that. Okay? And I had a student who was displeased that she could not roll her R's, and I remember she worked at it. I would hear her sitting in the front row of my classroom. This is true, and she would be going almost like a cat purring. She was practicing the rolling the R's. I was going on teaching the class, and eventually now she speaks Spanish beautifully with a beautiful accent. And she was very proud. I mastered that. Don't give up. It's radio. It's not radio. Okay, radio. La radio. By the way, radio can be either masculine or feminine. This is a very unusual word depending on the type of radio and the context in which you're using it. But I will always use it in the feminine form within this program. This is el campo. Repeat, el campo. Okay, two things there. Did you say or did you say Okay, tighten the muscles in your face. Smile, excuse me. You guys still there? Tighten the muscles in your face. Push the sound upward. Smile a little bit and say Okay, el campo, o. Second thing to focus on there is the o. It's not o. Don't change the shape of your mouth. You just say o, el campo. Okay, está bien. Después, la ropa. La ropa. Notice how you roll the R. The R being in the initial position in that word, ropa. You roll the sound, la ropa. And then el tren. El tren, okay, está bien. The most important thing I can say to you is that as you see me pronouncing words, as you click on nouns and the little video is shown in which you see the close-up of my mouth, focus on it. Try to imitate. Make it your goal to be as authentic and accurate as possible. I'm not the best example. A native speaker is the best example. But in lieu of a native speaker being present, I'm not a bad model. Do the best you can to imitate me. Well, we've spent a lot of time on this topic. We need to very quickly go down to just a few examples here of, let's pass all this vocabulary and just do a few sample sentences here together so we can talk about the structure of these sentences in this particular section right here. So now we've learned the word la escuela, la escuela, la escuela. It's not escuela or escuela. It's escuela, escuela. Okay, la escuela. Some things are going to occur which would be unexpected to you. You're going to hear some words that aren't represented by pictures here. If I had a picture for every single word which you're going to say in Spanish, my lines of pictures would be far too long. They stretch off the end of this screen and go down to a second line. And so the pictures are there not to tell you that this is every word in the sentence you're going to say, but to give you the concept, just like in your mind, what's going on in your mind as you're speaking, the concept of what it is you want to express. Here the idea is that I go to a school. Okay, I go to school. So how would you get that idea across? That's what matters most. Well, you'll start off with the subject, yo, and then the verb. That's not complicated. The complicated part is remembering the conjugation. What is the conjugation with ir when yo is the subject? You remember from the first time through lesson 120? It's yo voy. Yo voy. Tú would be vas. Él or ella would be va. Okay, so yo voy. And then escuela. Okay, la escuela. La escuela, that you know. But it's not a complete sentence. When I click on it, or when you click on it, you won't hear yo voy la escuela. You'll hear yo voy a la escuela. You heard an extra sound in there. You hear the sound a. Yo voy a la escuela. Now, what in the world do you think that a could be conveying? Why is it necessary to say a? Well, it's because we need to show direction. We need to show, I could be going to school, I could be going around the school, I could be going near the school, I could be going far from the school. In fact, a lot of you might want to go far from the school right about now. And so the word a indicates direction. Okay, it's a preposition, indicates in what direction you're moving as you're doing this. Now you can probably imagine by context that the most likely meaning of this extra word that you're hearing, a, which I, by the way, if I were in class teaching you face to face, you'd be seeing me do this many times. As I said, the word a, showing that someone's coming in a certain direction, moving to a point. It's the idea of to, isn't it? I go to school. That's the most likely meaning of this series of pictures you're seeing here. Yo voy a la escuela. Next one down. Tú vas. I should have said it for you. That was a mistake. How would you say this? Yeah, tú vas. Remember, tú always has a s at the end, even though it's an irregular verb. The irregular verbs will tend to follow the basic patterns. The s will at least be present. So tú vas, showing direction now. A, and then the noun which corresponds to this picture, la escuela. Tú vas a la escuela. Now, I've said to you before that you don't have to say the tú, the subject pronouns, the yo, tú, the ella, assuming that the person to whom you're speaking knows to whom you're referring as you speak. But you aren't talking to anybody here, and so I'm going to always, for the first unit, give you the subject pronoun in my response. So when you click, you'll hear tú vas a la escuela. You could simply say vas a la escuela, and that would get the job done as well. Let's do a couple more examples together. That'll set you free. Usted, what should this be? Right, va, and then again, a, which you don't see a picture for it, but you've got to indicate in what direction you're moving. You want to make sense. And then what is this object right here? Oh, maybe you haven't learned. Yeah, you've learned it. At least you've heard it. La iglesia. Usted va a la iglesia. Usted va a la iglesia. By the way, va a la iglesia, you're not hearing the va and the a very distinctly because the va ends in the sound a. A is the sound a, and therefore they tend to run together. And when I give you the answers, I will speak not in a stilted fashion. As you click, you'll hear a more or less conversational rate of speed. And so you'll maybe only hear Usted va a la iglesia. Excuse me. Hopefully you hear something better than that. Usted va a la iglesia. Va. I just extended the a sound a little bit more because there are two of them there. But nonetheless, they tend to run together. Let me scroll down to the changing of verbs here. Here are some negative sentences now. This is the verb, as you know, conocer, conocer. With yo, remember the irregular form of conocer? Yo. It has the o at the end, but its beginning part, called the stem, changes. Yeah, it's conozco. So, yo conozco, but this is a negative sentence. So, yo no conozco, and then al hombre. Now, do I really want to get into the personal a at this point? Why do I say al hombre? It's el hombre. I'm going to do it, but I'll come back to this many times to remind you. I'm going to be brief about this. When a person or a word referring to a person, like man, or it could be the guy's name, Chuck, or it could be any word that refers to a person, like people, the word people, la gente. When they are the ones, when that person is receiving this action, this is the person doing the action, called the subject. This is the action, called the verb. I know, and he is the one who is being known. He is receiving the action, you might say, of being known. To know is not a very aggressive action. Let me try something a little better. Well, let's pretend my brother's over here. You know what my brother would like to do if he could? Yeah, that's right there. Pegar. He'd love to hit me. But fortunately, he's not here right now, so I'll do it to my... In any case, let's pretend Michael just did that. Miguel pega, which is pegar is right there, pega a Steve. Miguel pega a Steve. It's his habit, so it's an easy sentence to use because it really corresponds to reality I'm used to. In any case, why did I say a in that situation? Because Michael performs the action. He's the subject. The action itself is pegar, which is to hit, and I'm very directly receiving the brunt of that action, aren't I? I'm what's called the object. In fact, I'm called a direct object in the sentence. But the term is not critical. The idea is that you understand that the one who receives, not who performs the action, but receives the action, if it's a person receiving the action, or a word referring to a person, you precede the person's name or the noun referring to the person with the word a. It has no translation in English. No, it's like a placeholder. It simply has to be there in Spanish. And so I would say in this sentence, yo no conozco a el hombre. Yo no conozco a el hombre. Now I'm going to come back to this a el in just a second. Let me give you another example of that same thing. Here's, let's take la mujer. I don't know the woman. Yo no conozco a la mujer. I'm the one doing the action. This is the action. She receives the action of being known. And so, since the word woman, mujer, refers to a person, I precede the word referring to that person with the word a. Okay. Now, I will mention this one last sticky point. That's why I said this lesson is full of landmines. You'll hear some unexpected words within this lesson. A and el in Spanish, a and el cannot be said. A, el. When you're saying a plus the word the. A and el form a single word, the word al. That's why when I said, yo no conozco al hombre, I said al and not el. Yo no conozco al hombre. They form in essence a contraction. A and el together form al. Okay, you'll learn another contraction later on, but that explains why you hear al in many examples here. Like usted no conoce al muchacho. Okay, let me do one series of questions with you, and then I'll set you free. This has already been challenging enough. Usted conoce. This is los niños. Okay, now you are doing the action. This is the action. They receive the action, or they are the ones who are known, you could say. Okay, since the word niños, children, refers to people. Some people would say children are people. In any case, because they receive the action of being known, and this refers to people, I must put the word a before children. So, usted conoce a los niños would be the statement. Usted conoce a los niños. Now I'm going to turn it into a question of the first type. Usted conoce, I'm going to use the inversion form. ¿Conoce usted a los niños? And the second form would be, usted conoce a los niños, ¿verdad? Okay. Well, that's what you need to do throughout lesson 1.23. This has been a long study together. I hope it's been helpful. It might not be bad to listen to this a second time if you're confused, but I will certainly reiterate these more challenging points as we move through the rest of Unit 1. Okay, it's up to you now. It's all on you. Lesson 1.20. Adiosito. I'll see you in the course of our next class.